In this video, I'm going to show you how to begin placing the walls of your house. So I'm in the file with the grid, and my current layer is a layer called A Wall Full. It's color cyan, and that, if we use the ccc.ctv plot style file, should produce some lines that have a heavier line weight. Okay, so to get started, you want to reference the floor plan that you're going to be drawing. So I'm going to actually bring that image file into this AutoCAD file so I can see it on the same screen. Now, you don't need to do this. You can just kind of toggle between the image on the Miro board, but you may find this is a useful thing to know how to do. The first thing you would need to be able to do, though, is to create an image file of that diagram. So you can use the snipping tool to generate a kind of a screen capture or a sort of more cropped view of that. So the tool that you use in AutoCAD to bring in an image file is called XREF. So I'm going to go to the command line and type in XREF. And this is the current file that I'm in. If you come up to this arrow here, you'll see an option to attach an image. Okay. Once you do this, you'll browse for the image. So you want to know where you saved it, and you'll be given some options to bring it into the file. Okay, so now I'm going to go search for it on my computer. So I found the file. I'm going to click on it and click on open, and I'll just accept all of the defaults as I bring this image in. All right, so now it's asking me where to insert it. I'm just going to click a point over here on the left and another point to give it some height. Okay, so now I have this file in here, and what I can do is move it just so it's right next to my grid. All right. Now, why do I have this here? So that I can kind of map out, where the walls of my floor plan are going to be. Now, one thing you need to make sure is that your rectangles and your squares are actually on the grid lines, because we're going to use those as references. So to sort of map out where these rooms are, what I'm going to do is use the line tool, and I'm going to just make these X's across those locations. So that is the bedroom view from here to here. This is the bathroom. Also bathroom. Got the kitchen next to that. Oops. My line command. And I'm drawing these on the A wall full layer, but eventually I will be erasing these lines. Line here, the vestibule. Okay, my living room is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you'll notice that I have ortho set, but the object snaps are kind of overriding. Now, one thing you'll notice, though, is that every time I choose a point, it's finding either an endpoint or an intersection. The little X that you see, the green X, that is an intersection. Okay, so something I did incorrectly here. I'm going to move my dining room up. So M for move. I picked both lines, and I'm going to reset these to one grid up, right? And I also have a hallway that is going from here to here. I think I'll put front door in this vestibule and maybe a back door over on this side. Okay. So some of these planning issues aren't so important. The really critical thing is learning how to use these various operations and generate a floor plan in AutoCAD. So that's the first step to this whole thing. Now, technically, I don't need this image file anymore. And as I mentioned before, you don't necessarily need to bring the image in here. It's just maybe helpful to see it, but you can always toggle between the Miro board and your AutoCAD file. Now, before adding the walls, I want to talk a little bit about some dimensions. So this diagram is intended to illustrate the differences between the thicknesses for interior walls and the thicknesses for exterior walls. This slightly yellowish grid is the grid that we're using for this project. And as you can see, these walls, here's an interior wall, and these two are exterior walls. They have different thicknesses. Now, why would you do this? Well, for a number of reasons. For one thing, an exterior wall is normally thicker than an interior wall because you have certain finishes on the exterior that take up more dimension. So for example, maybe you have a brick house. So you don't need to bring the brick to the interior, so those walls can be thinner. Another reason you might have thicker walls on the exterior is that you want to insulate the walls so that they resist the passage of heat and cold through them. So you might thicken the framing so that you have more dimension to put insulation. So when we start to get into the construction of the walls, one thing to keep in mind is that the interior walls are thinner, and as you can see, they are centered on the grid. Their total thickness is 5 inches. So that means 2.5 on one side and 2.5 on the other side. Okay, now let me go ahead and make sure that you're seeing what I'm seeing with the cursor. So again, I'll repeat that. 5 inches wide here, centered on a grid line. Okay, that's for the interior walls. So 2.5 and 2.5. And down here where we have these exterior walls, we have the same relationship on the interior side. So this is like, let's say this is a living room, for example. The walls are 2.5 inches in from the grid line on the interior side, but on the exterior side, they're 5.5. And again, that is so we can get, whatever finishes we're going to put on the exterior, plus the possibility of having thicker walls for insulation. So total width of 8, total width of 5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, and then 5.5. Okay, another thing that I want to illustrate before we get started on this is a tool called polyline. So far we've just been making lines and maybe some rectangles and some other shapes. But a polyline has certain features that can be useful from time to time. So I'm going to click on the polyline here, and just to sort of illustrate a few things, I'm going to begin to draw some lines with this polyline. Now, you don't need to do what I'm doing right now. I'm just, again, trying to illustrate. So I'm bringing it around, and then I'm going to type in C for close. Okay, so now I have this shape. And if you notice, when I click on it, everything is highlighted or highlighted. It's no longer just a series of lines. And the reason for that is because it is a polyline. When I click on these elements over here, these are lines. And if I want to see a little bit more about what constitutes these polylines, I can click on that object. And if I come over to the properties window, I think you know how to open this window by right-clicking on the element. It's going to tell you a few things about it. For one thing, it's a polyline, okay? So there's a certain usefulness to having them all joined, and hopefully it will be clear why we're using a polyline when we construct this floor plan. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start with the exterior walls, and I'm going to use my grid, and I'm going to use the polyline tool. So I can get rid of this one. Go up to the ribbon. PL, by the way, is the alias or hotkey. And you can just start anywhere. And I'm just going around where all those X's are. And I am creating a polyline. Right? All the way around here. And on my last one, I can input C, or I could just snap on that point. Okay. So here I have this polyline. And why that's particularly useful in this case is because I can use the offset command to generate that thickness that I was trying to accomplish with the exterior walls. So this is just the exterior wall all the way around the plan. If you remember, when I was explaining like the thicknesses, our exterior walls are 8 inches thick, but they're 5.5 inches towards the exterior side. So I'm going to use the offset command. I'm going to input 5.5, enter, and then I'm going to pick the polyline and snap a point anywhere outside of the plan. If I did it inside, it would do it 5.5 inches to the interior, but I want it to be on the exterior. Okay, so now I have, and I can type in EIST to check the thickness. So 5.5. Now what I need to do is offset the interior side 2.5. So I'm going to type in O for offset. This time I'm going to put 2.5, and I'm going to click a point on the inside. I'm done with the line that's on the grid, and I can just erase it or delete it. Okay. All right, now the exterior walls are done, and what I need to do is begin bringing in interior walls. Now, you know, if you want, you can make some decisions ahead of time. For example, let's say, you know, with respect to the interior walls, maybe I want there to be an open space between my dining room and my living room. I could leave that wall out, or I could just make a kind of a larger opening. So some of these things will just depend on your intentions for your plans, but you could also just add walls between every room and then come back later and clean them up. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to need a wall between my bedroom and bathroom and around my bathroom, and maybe parts of the kitchen here, but we can kind of come to those decisions at a later time. For the time being, I'm just going to make a few lines around the project where those walls are going to be. So again, my wall layer is going to be fine for this purpose. One thing that you could do is to take certain lines and extend them. Now, I also think it might be a good idea at this point to take these polylines and remove their polylineness from them. Okay, what do I mean by that? I'm saying to convert them back to lines. Okay, how do you do that? The command is explode. Okay, now just a word of caution about explode. It can be a really helpful tool from time to time, but there's no going back. So certain kinds of things you should really avoid exploding, things like dimensions, because then it just turns them into a series of little bits that you can't really edit very well. So I'm suggesting that you use this explode command, but just be cautious if you use it for future things. Okay, explode, and I'm going to pick the exterior wall and the interior wall. Right now, when I click on those items, they are now individual lines. So I've got the properties window over here. You can see that they're now lines. Okay, so let's get started with our interior wall work. I'm going to make a few lines just to get started with them. Here's where you're going to need to use your judgment about what tool to use in what location. For one thing, I can see 2.5 inches in from the grid here and here. Eventually, I want these to join, right? So you need to use your discretion about what tool would be the best for this. I have this line drawn down the middle, but if I offset these lines, now I'm going to have a line that ends here and a line that then continues on and goes to the corner. But it would be better to have them be full lines. So I'm going to use the fillet command, and I'm going to use that to join this line to this one. Okay. Now on this side of the wall, I don't have any interior wall lines that I can use for this. So here I'm going to have to use my offset command. My offset is already defaulting to 2.5 because that's the last dimension that I use. So I'm going to accept that by pressing enter, and then I'm going to pick the line and tell it which side I want to offset it. I want to offset it to the left. And the same thing goes here. Right, so now I've got these two lines that I can eliminate. And I can also start to eliminate these X's as I'm not using them anymore. I'll kind of erase them as I go along. Here I have a joint that needs to be cleaned up. I'm going to use the fillet tool again for that one. Fillet, pick the two lines. Now they're joining at the corner. Okay. Other tools that you may find useful in this process. If I click on a line, I can grab that grip and I can bring it over to this line. I can see it's gravitating towards the endpoint. How do I make it so it's perpendicular there? Well, I come down to my object snaps and I turn on perpendicular. Now, when I come over here, it will draw the line perpendicular to that exterior wall. Okay, now it's something I did not anticipate it doing. So I'm dragging that other end back to the other side. Now here's another opportunity to use my fillet tool. Fillet. Okay. I'm going to have a line between my bathroom and my kitchen. So I'll create a line along the center here. And I'll do another one. I can do a couple of things here. I could stretch this over. I'll do a little bit of cleaning up in a moment. For this one, I don't have anything to extend from, so I'll use offset again. Offset, accept the distance. 1, 2. Okay, erase the middle line. Let's get rid of this one. Let's get rid of this one. Don't need it, don't need it. And then we can go around and clean up a little bit. I'm going to drag this endpoint back here. Maybe you remember the trim command. That's a useful one for this kind of editing, trim. And I can pick these two lines. Use trim for all these two. Okay, look where these are joining here. I want to get rid of those. Trim, trim. And I can do something here, trim, and I'll get rid of this one, this one. Now, right now, I'm just enclosing these entirely. At some point, I will create openings and doorways and things like that. At the moment, I'm just going to kind of block most of the walls in. I'm going to make a line down the middle here. This is my vestibule. Offset 2.5. Okay, this one is going to extend. So instead of having two lines that kind of join, it's better typically to extend them all the way. We can go in and start to clean up intersections too. All right. This one will start to form the wall of my hallway. This one too. Oops, that's not right. That's my dining room. I'm going to cut it back. Not exactly the most efficient process, but okay. I'm going to make a line that forms the edge of that vestibule, and I'll use my offset. And okay, I'll use fillet here. I could make a line down the middle of this grid and offset it, or since I know the thickness of the wall, interior wall is 5 inches, 2.5 plus 2.5, I could pick it and offset it 5 inches. Just have to remember to bring it back if I need to offset 2.5. Okay, fill it, fill it, pick a line, fill it here, and erase this. Fill it, this one to this one, this one. Feel free to use the tool that seems easiest, quickest, most productive. All right, so that's what I have. This is all of the interior walls and all of the exterior walls. Exterior walls are 8 inches, interior walls are 5.